Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly title. I'm this week's host, Jesse Billington, and I am joined once again by our editor, David Sinister,
Hello.
and our content editor, James Peen.
Good morning.
Gents, how are we? And we'll kick off as we usually do with an Our Classics catch-up. And James, I know before the bank holiday weekend you left us with the promise that you were going to get some work done. Did you?
I did get a little bit done, not a huge amount because it was like 32 degrees. Everything I took was baking hot, but I did get out on the van, took the battery off, put that back on charge. That's now 100%. Clean out the cobwebs again, put a few fasteners on, and then spent the rest of the weekend in the garden with the paddling pool and a barbecue. So I did a little bit. Bought a few bits as well, which I bought a vintage Surrey badge to cover up a hole on the Beta, which obviously people at home aren't going to see unless they're watching this on YouTube. And they very kindly sent me a Somerset one as well, which was very nice. So when I find another hole, that can go on that as well. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, that's very funky. I like that. David, any updates on your side of things? Have you had the Mazda out with the lovely weather?
Well, it's through the MOT, which is brilliant. So I've been doing various bits to it. So it's went through initially. It's failed on a couple of things, mainly a broken coil spring. So we've had that done. The main thing now, I need to insure it and tax it, so obviously before it can go anywhere. So that's the next thing I need to do. The main thing I've been doing this week is taking advantage of the lovely sunny weather to add a little bit of mold inside, having been sat all winter. So I've been popping the hood down and just basically letting the sun do its work, and it's done a great job of getting rid of some of the moldy bits. So it smells a lot fresher inside, which is brilliant. But I need to get the car insured and MOT, insured and taxed, and then first thing I need to do is get the leaky alloy sorted so that the tyres doesn't keep going down. So that's that. And then on the Toyota, they have greased up the suspension bushes at the back, so it's not creaking anymore.
Oh, very useful. I was going to say, I remember you've had there's that porous alloy that needs sorting, but do you think you'll get it done for the weekend? Are you out and about to any shows and events this weekend, or?
I am, but I was going to say I'm not going to get it sorted for this weekend because I'm taking the train down to Brighton, which we'll get to, I'm sure, in a bit. But yeah, sadly the MX-5 is not going because we're going in an Audi TT instead.
Lovely. We'll touch on that in a bit. We do have that on the roster of bits to get through, but yeah, I've also been in the workshop most evenings actually this week, to be fair, and all the bits of the bank holiday where I wasn't working. I was in the workshop. The midget now has front suspension on both sides, and I finally managed to corral my friend back to the workshop to do the much promised welding. So yeah, we're able to weld up the cracks through the original wishbone mount, which have all come up quite strongly, and I'd ordered a fresh wishbone mount anyway that we were able to sort of cut and sort of bend and then essentially use as a sort of overplate on top of it as a belt and braces. So we've got a really good strong sort of welded repair patch on there. Painted that all up, and last night I managed to get the wishbone in, the spring in, the stub axle on, brake calipers refitted. So tonight I think it's just going to be put all the panels back on, put the wheels on, and get it off of its jack stands. So fingers crossed,
yeah,
it should be on the road for this weekend. So yeah, slowly getting there. But I did completely forget my house keys on Wednesday night. And yeah, viewer and reader listener insight here. I still live at home with my parents. My dad goes to bed at about 10:30, and I didn't message him before he went to bed saying leave a key out for me. So there was not a key left out for me. So I get home at about 10 to midnight and have to question how do I get in the house without alerting my parents to the fact that I'm locked out at the age of 28, and then realize, courtesy of it being extremely hot, my big bedroom window was still open, so I was able to sort of shimmy up a drain pipe across a section of flat roof and into my room without alerting anyone to the fact that I'd completely forgotten to take my keys with me to the workshop. So yeah, they are sneaking into your parents' house aged 28, and not for any nefarious reasons, just because you're in the workshop until late.
You make a good burglar, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm remarkably silent for someone who's 6'1" and weighs nearly 90 kilos. But yeah, the Jimny is next on the job list. However, we'll touch on we had the Classic Car Weekly Young Owners meet last weekend, which went really well, bar the fact that the Jimny managed to blow its radiator and coolant hoses on the way there. So bumming along the M6 to get to it, and I noticed the temperature gauge just starts sort of creeping higher and higher. Uh, Classic car trick, put the heater on, roll down the windows, and just see if that does anything to help the problem. It takes the away from the red end of the gauge. But yeah, checked it when we got to Withall. It was spitting fluids everywhere. So not great. Managed to fill it up with water and coolant, limped it home, and yeah, that radiator and hoses need replacing. It's at 95,000 miles. It's a 2008 car, so it's kind of a consumable at this point, really. So
I was going to say you definitely must have limped at home because I got in my shamefully to admit my hire car, drove back up the M6 all the way back to the northwest, went shopping, got back in, and it was only then you text me saying that you'd got home. So I'm guessing it was quite a long afternoon of limping with knackered radiators.
yeah, I took it very gently on the way back. What time did I message you? I messaged you at 4:20. Yeah, I got more accurately, I got home. Yeah, that would have been about actually when I got home. Yeah, 4:20. I did go via Caffeine and Machine just south of there because I wanted to sort of take it on a short run, having completely topped it up with coolant just to see how much it was getting through and try and plan sort of how many more stops I might need.
Of course.
So from there, I was able to sort of leave it to cool down, check the fluids, check the levels, and then go again. And yeah, it wasn't a comfortable drive home. I was slowly sort of cooking myself pretty much to sort of the point of delirium. The worst it got was just as we were coming down the M1, the final section to get to sort of Flitwick, come off, and I'm like, okay, temperature gauge, nothing I'm doing is bringing it out of the red. So I knew there's a disused railway station just about sort of 2 minutes off the motorway. Pull into the old car park there, pop the bonnet, and there is a pile of scrap wood in the corner of the car park, and I've got shop cloth in the back. So I'm like, okay, I can just start loosening the radiator cap, and then with a very long piece of wood, just poke it, and it just jettisons the cap on a sort of bed of steam through the air. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. Um, so yeah, again, dump another sort of 5 liters of coolant into the car, set off again, get it home, park it up in the yard, and it's now just raining fluid out the bottom. So I'm like, right, yeah, this needs fixing. But at this point, weirdly enough, the MG was the easier one to fix. So welded, put everything back together, and hopefully going to be on the road this evening. So we'll see how it goes. Then it'll get a good clean because I think I'm off to Wheeler Dealer Live on Sunday over at Bicester Heritage. So I've got plenty to. I need to get a car on the road.
The joys of old cars.
Oh, it's all part of the fun. But speaking of old cars, or rather the flip side of that, modern classics, and they are very much leading the way on the market at the moment. This is the lead story in the current issue that we've got out on sale. What's sort of the starting point for this, James? This was the story that you sort of stumbled across.
Well, this was actually David. You started looking at a bit of a market analysis, didn't you, of what's hot and what's not at the moment, and it's the sort of late 90s, early noughties stuff seems to be the hot ticket in the auction market at the moment.
Well, if anything, it's yeah. I mean, we've seen over the last couple of years or so, sort of '90s cars doing really well at auctions. There's a big market for modern classics. We know that more than half of the classics that are traded at auctions are cars that aren't old enough for tax exemption. But what we've seen more recently is cars that are even younger than that. So we're talking stuff from the late 2000s into the 2010s in some cases. So yeah, the car on the cover of this week's issue is the Jaguar F-Type, and that is a car that is gaining traction. The early examples now are starting to be talked about in the same sort of conversations as other modern classics. So we are seeing people treating them that way and paying accordingly for them at auctions.
And again, it's the changing demographic. That's what seems to be behind this. Is the next generation of people come to the market, they're buying the cars they remember or they lusted after. And I think one of the things that was picked up on is that today's generation grew up on the PlayStation, like driving sort of Japanese cars, and now they're actually buying the real thing.
Yeah, it is cars like the Nissan GTR, the Audi R8s, things like 997 Gen 911s, that sort of thing. These are the cars that seem to be really gaining traction at the moment with the classic market.
The sort of aspirational bits and pieces from the sort of Forza Horizon era and sort of the Gran Turismo sort of series of games are really what's sort of driving that interest in the market at the moment. And I think possibly without wanting to make a rod for my own back or sort of a future markets thing, do you think there's also a correlation between what received sort of a power test on Top Gear and got that sort of halo figure of sort of the stamp of authenticity and excitement versus what's now doing well on the market? Because obviously early episodes of Top Gear are now well over sort of 20 years old. We're seeing those cars as well approach sort of modern classicdom.
Yeah, it's interesting because those cars, which they were seen by millions of people on Sunday night, the people who were watching those power tests are now in the position to buy classics. So what we've seen is things like and it tends to be sort of the spicier versions of cars, things like 911 GT3s and sort of Jaguar XKR S's, that kind of thing, doing really well. Conversely, if you look, actually things like air cooled at 911s from the 80s and so on, they're actually dropping a little bit at the moment. So again, it just shows you where that demographic is at the moment. So I mean, a lot of it still depends on condition and history and mileage, but it just as a broader brushstroke of the market, you can see that people are going for the sort of the stuff that they remember growing up with.
So obviously we've seen the market sort of approaching these sort of younger and more modern classics. What's also at the bottom of its depreciation curve at the moment? Is that some of the sort of point that's really selling at the moment is cars that are hitting those low prices naturally?
I think when I was talking to a couple of auction people about this. I think the stuff that doesn't tend to be doing as well, regardless of age, is stuff that's a bit stuff that's a bit rough around the edges, stuff that needs work and has high mileage, that kind of thing. When I was, without wanting to give away too much, I mean, I drove a 205 GTI the other day, and that was it only went for 4.5 grand. It was a great example of a 205 GTI, but the mileage was 170,000. So it was no one's going to want to pay, loads of money for something like that. And it had a few rough edges that needed sorting out. So perfectly acceptable car, but that is where the market is generally plateaued a bit.
Yeah. And is this sort of a buying trend for a younger audience? Is they're looking for cars that don't require as much work? They're going to have that sort of longer lifespan with them if they're buying something that's lower mileage. Is this something to do with sort of the audience trend shifting more that's driving the market off the sort of back of it?
I think it's if you look at modern classics, things like MX-5, for example, my one that's outside, there are so many of them out there, and there are a lot of rough examples. So regardless of how much nostalgia there is for them, that is most of them aren't going to go up massively in price, but certainly those cars we've been talking about, that in this week's feature, things like hot 911s, Audi R8s, that kind of thing, they tend to be fairly well looked after anyway. So because they're bought by fairly affluent, they go to a fairly affluent market when they're new. So it's unlikely you're going to get a really tired example anyway. So those tend to sort of go to a particular level, and they don't go below them either.
I mean, the thing is, every single buying guide I've ever read or written always says the same thing: it's to buy the best one you possibly can afford, isn't it? Because it's cheaper in the long run. But then if you can't afford the best one, then the solution is you buy a slightly rough one and you live with it and you make it better. It's just courses.
Yeah.
Or you go for the next best thing, which I mean, James, you'll remember this happening with Porsche 912s. 911 air cooled 911 shot up, and the first thing everybody did when they couldn't afford was they bought a 912 instead.
I know, which is really annoying because I'd love to buy another 912, but they are now out of reach considerably. So yes, now I'm looking at 914s and other Porsches, but yeah, it's exactly the same thing. People just look around for the next thing, don't they? So the fast Ford thing sort of then led to like a fast Renault or fast Citroen, whatever. So you always cast around, don't you, for the next thing you can possibly afford that sort of tickles your fancy.
Yeah.
You look for the next thing down the line. It's one of those interesting things. And you mentioned in the feature that we've got out in this week's one, sort of the buy them now before they're gone. And obviously this is very much a spread of modern classics that are sort of really appealing on the market at the moment because they're at the bottom of that sort of price curve. And there are some interesting picks in here, some that I never really sort of thought. Certainly the Jaguar F-Type was the one that really surprised me. It came through because in my mind, that's still an incredibly modern car. I never thought that it would have had this sort of a depreciation sort of drop off to the point of where it's at on the market now.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because yeah, I mean, the one that surprised me actually was we talked about the Aston Martin DB7 Vantage, which I think is a car that good examples of these will start appreciating it, in the not too distant future. But conversely, if you look at straight six DB7s, they've been barreling along in the kind of the mid to low teens for ages. It's I have seen DB7s, and the thing with DB7s now is there are rough ones out there. I have seen them changing hands for under 10K at auction.
Hmm. They're sort of falling in sort of a strange world where their market prices, I won't say it's linked or tied to, but you can sort of almost trace it similarly to the Jaguar XK that it was sort of based around, in the
Mm.
fact that people sort of go, oh, well, I could buy one of those, but for a little bit more, I could have the one with the Aston Martin badge on it. And it's one of those interesting sort of tipping points of sort of it's sort of selling off of its own sort of badge and moniker more so than it is of its own sort of right. And it's really interesting seeing sort of
Yeah,
which one does well at any given point in time as to which one people remember is the cheap one for any sort of 18-month span.
yeah.
But no, I mean, James, you had the interesting pick of the second generation Boxster and Cayman, which I think makes sense because we've seen such sort of a huge drive of people going after the first gen Boxster at the moment because it's the cheap Porsche you can pick up for. And everyone's sort of forgotten about the second gen, which has sort of been tumbling towards it.
Yeah, I mean, I regularly do a bit of Porsche window shopping. So it's my wife's watching, I don't know, Love Island on TV. I'm on the internet looking at cars that I could possibly buy one day if I had the money. And I always come back to sort of Boxsters, but then I don't really like open top cars because I've got a good bonnet I want to keep hold of. So Caymans, and the thing with Caymans, well, Cayman's like a poor man's 911, but then what is a 911? It's just two extra seats, isn't it? So I think, as I think I said in the piece, that every Porsche goes through like a period in the doldrums, and you have to buy it at the right time and at the right price. And I did that with a 997, which I bought, drove it for a year, sold it for what I paid for it, and now that's accelerated beyond what I'd pay for a car these days. So yeah, it's just I think a Cayman or a Boxster is a cracking choice.
I think the more the trick for buying Porsches is simply look at whatever you've sold and then sort of hang on to it for another 5 years. That seems to be very much the trick.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is I should never have sold any of the cars I've bought, which I'm going to agree with right now.
You're really good at picking cars that will appreciate. You just forget to wait for them to appreciate before you sell them.
There's always something else out there. So yeah, I sell it and think, oh, I should never have sold that. So there's probably about 20 cars in my dream garage that I've owned that I should never have sold.
To be fair, I think I'm world class at buying. We talk about cars that are going to go up in value and stuff. I think I'm world class at buying cars that don't appreciate in value. The MGB GT is still really cheap. The Brighton Simmons GT is still really cheap. The MX-5 is still really cheap. So it's, but I'm more about having, making memories than making money.
You saying that the Toyota Avensis isn't about to shoot up in value?
Sadly not. No, I think it's while it does a roaring trade in the Bradford minicab trade, I don't think it's yet to take off as a modern classic.
Damn, I should have really thought about that investment a bit more carefully. Anyway, on a completely unrelated note and somewhat tied with market, this is something I sort of speculated with David yesterday, actually. Ferrari have recently released the Luce, their sort of mega electric sort of hypercar, supercar thing, and people are very divided. The question it does beg, though, is now the time to buy a Mondial? And is the new Luce the ugliest Ferrari? Because this is the thing, we saw it in part with Jaguar, but they released the project, what is it, the 00, the Project 01 or whatever it was, that new giant slab-sided thing where everyone went, oh, but it's not an old Jaguar. And it sort of reignited a love for the 70s and 80s period from Jaguar, but a lot of people started buying up XJSs, XJCs, and so on. Are we going to see people doing this with Ferraris? And is the cheap end of the Ferrari market going to start sort of disappearing as people sort of try and jump on the bandwagon and try and sort of reignite a bit of hype for Ferrari, but at their price point?
I think the thing with Ferraris is that I'm so used to Ferraris when they're being launched being considered ugly and then aging fantastically that I almost don't I almost I'm a bit blasé about all the history about the Luce. It's I remember the 550 Maranello that was considered ugly when it came out. The same deal with the 360 Modena when that was introduced. I don't think the Luce is actually a particularly bad looking car, and it's and if Ferrari, they do make GTs as well as supercars, and if they think that the best way of getting, stomping quite, super quiet performance is electric, then why not? That's the first thing, and the second thing is, you talk about the Mondial. It's that was considered an ugly Ferrari when it first came out. But again, I think as time has gone on, it's actually aged quite well. I think it's considered to be more. Same with the 400. It's considered to be as time has gone on, its lines are looking ever more crisp, and I think it is being treated by the classic market for the car it is. I think the problem Ferrari has is I blame specifically the 308 GTB, is that was such a perfect example of what a Ferrari should be, that every car they've ever launched since is compared to it, it's equally at the top end with the F40 as well. And I think if it's not a ground hugging Rosso Corsa supercar, people are going to be disappointed.
The thing is, no matter what we think, people are still going to buy it because it's a EV and it's a Ferrari, so it ticks two boxes. So if you want a swanky EV to drive around London in, and you have a Ferrari badge, people are going to snap it up. It's it's not a real Ferrari, but then what is a real Ferrari? It's you put a badge on it, it's a Ferrari.
I mean, I think the interior, to my eye, is absolutely fantastic. I love the really clean interior design and the way that sort of the trim work is very 70s in its ribbing and its sort of pattern to it. The exterior is divisive, and I think there are certain areas they could have really done a bit better on. I mean, you can get into the accuracies of sort of where they should have brought the front window line down to. It overextends past the sort of center line of the front wheels. It makes it look more like an MPV than a sort of coupe or SUV or anything. But it's not a terrible design, but I mean, you mentioned the 400 and the Mondial as sort of two of the more sort of iconic whiffed design elements from Ferrari, and I think it could be one of those interesting things. It could be something to sort of keep an eye on, whether the market suddenly sort of goes people in the same way we saw for the XJS. A lot of people went, actually, retrospectively, pretty cool. I don't know if there's going to be sort of a similar thing where people sort of look back at sort of the sort of Testarossa style sort of four-seater Cabrio Ferrari and go, you know what, not half bad. And I've always thought the 400 was actually quite a nice piece of design. I really like that.
Yeah,
But
same with the 308 GT4. I remember writing about that last year. So, for years it was considered one of the dogs of the Ferrari range. I think it's a fantastic looking car. It's it drives really nice. It's got that wonderfully squat Bertoni styling, and I think and it's not just my opinion. I think the prices that people are now paying for them at auctions reflects the fact that the market is coming around to appreciating it for what it really is.
yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see how you can buy one because traditionally now, don't you? If you want to buy a new Ferrari, they won't sell you something until you've bought something else on their food chain. So can you just go in and buy a Luce? Will that be their new marketing?
It depends. Well, this is what David Noah said yesterday. If the Luce is the one that you have to buy to get access to the upper echelons of the Ferrari market, then it's going to sell like hotcakes because people are always going to want the 812 Superfast or whatever the top range V12 Ferrari is. They'll always have to buy the entry level one. But if they have it as the top one, it's only ever going to serve as sort of like weirdly placed fuel for people to buy Romas and the whatever the California T became. But yeah, I mean, there's been some absolutely whiffed Ferrari designs previously as well. The Super America 410 Ghia jumps to mind. That was a very strange looking thing. I don't encourage any listeners to go and Google a picture of that because that was, if you thought Edsel made a mistake with their front end with their big cars, the Super America 410 was, yeah, it was supposed to be sort of all American design influence, but it really never worked and makes the Luce look quite combined as a piece of design. But anyway, enough modern car talk. David, you hinted earlier on in the show that you're heading to Brighton with an Audi TT. How can people get involved in that? other than
Yeah,
seeing
so
you on
so
the
the
track?
the London to Brighton Classic Car Run, pot which we are the media partners for, is on Sunday. It goes from Brooklands Museum. It takes a series of different routes depending on what car you're in, through the South Downs and through lovely parts of the south of England, all meeting up for a big car show on on Madeira Drive on the seafront at Brighton. So James Sadlier and I are going to be taking part in his Audi TT. We've got a CCW reader who's taking part in a lovely Mercedes 450 SL as well. But yeah, you can. I mean, details are on the website, which is popupcarshows.co.uk. Yeah, you can get the details of the route as well. But yeah, if you're in Brighton this Sunday, come along to the seafront. Come have a look at some lovely old cars and come say hello.
Should be. It's always a good day on that one. I've enjoyed doing it past couple of times, and I think the weather's looking like it's going to be pretty solid as well. So no reason to not head down to the coast and sort of form a lovely little car show. I think that's about enough for this week. I know that's all we've got sort of planned out, and equally we've still got an issue to put together ahead of next week, where James, the other James Sadlier, has been to the Sandringham Pageant of Motoring. We've got news from the Spa Classic, and there is a celebration of 50 years of the Golf GTI, unless there's anything else people want to draw attention to ahead of next week.
I think it's going to be a good issue, and yeah, again, keep an eye out on CCW soon for our report on the London's Brighton and other events that we're going to as well.
Yeah, it's another busy weekend of shows and live event coverage, so we'll be out and about and enjoying those. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me today, gents.
Yeah, been a pleasure as always.
And we'll be back next week with another issue and another edition of the Classic Car Weekly podcast.